What is going on, guys? The one thing we have talked about a lot on the channel is the 5.4, specifically the 5.4 2 valve that's in this 2003 F-150. We've talked why this is such a good engine, some of the normal problems you have with this engine. I've done videos on how to identify if you have the 2 valve, the 3 valve, the 4 valve. I'll throw the link to all those videos down below. But one thing that I get a question on a lot is why I don't like the 3 valve 5.4. So let's get into the number one problem with the 3 valve 5.4. So I'll just come right out and say it. It is the cam phaser issues they have with the 5.4. Let's talk about what's happening, why it's happening. I don't have a 3 valve here, but I've got some videos I will throw up of exactly what I'm talking about, just so you guys can kind of follow along. So here we've got a 3 valve 5.4. If we come over here on the passenger side, I'm going to point, there is one solenoid there under the valve cover. Come over here to the driver's side, and you can have the same thing positioned right there underneath that power steering reservoir. Now I've got a few things to kind of help explain how the system works. I want to go ahead and just say out front, these parts are not from a 3 valve 5.4, but they are the same parts, they work the same way. I'm just trying to convey what the problem is and what exactly is happening. So before everyone jumps in and says, that's not out of a 3 valve 5.4, I know, but it works exactly the same. We can explain the concept with these. So I've got 3 parts here. I've got some cam phasers, I've got one to take apart. I've also got a solenoid. So once again, like we talked about, coming right out of that valve cover that you can see on that video, you could see the little electrical connector poking up through the top of it. So that's what sticks out of your valve cover. That's where you plug the solenoid in. The rest of this is down underneath that valve cover. Then we've got our cam phasers. So you've got your timing chain that runs on this. Then you've got your camshaft running off of this as well. So this is all oil controlled. So let's talk about exactly how this works. So like I said, the cam phasers are oil controlled. So basically what this solenoid does is it shuttles to allow oil to get into the cam phaser. So oil pressure from the engine is put into this cam phaser, and that's how it's going to advance or retard the camshaft timing. Now, this is a cam phaser all taken apart. So you've got 2 pieces. Basically, you've got one side hooked to your timing chain, got one side connected to your camshaft. So basically what happens with these is oil is injected on one side or the other. And as it does that, it's going to push that camshaft in one direction. So if you want to do advanced timing, you put oil on one side. If you want to do retard timing, you put oil on the other. And now as this whole thing is spinning at a constant rate, we can now have some variability in where, as that's spinning, that camshaft's going to set. So while this is not a great design, because it is susceptible to issues, the main cause is not doing your oil changes like you should. So 5,000 miles synthetic oil is what you should be doing if you've got a 5.4 3 valve engine. If you're trying to do those 10,000 mile oil changes, the once a year oil changes, not paying attention to mileage, that's usually what kills these. So let's take a look at this solenoid and I'll show you exactly why. So when we look at this solenoid, if you look all the way down here, there are some screens. So that screen is designed to keep debris out of the system, out of your cam phasers. But what happens is if you start getting sludge buildup in your oil system, now you start to plug these screens. Now you can't get that oil into the phasers like it's supposed to. So once these screens start to get plugged up. Once again, you can't get oil into that phaser. These systems require at least 25 psi oil pressure to get into the systems to work. Now, Ford has come out with new solenoids, I believe, that come in and require less oil pressure. But once again, that's just kind of band-aiding a problem that exists with buildup plugging the screens in the first place. So you start getting those things plugged up. Now you can't get oil in here to actuate this like the computer wants to. So what happens is it commands a solenoid. It assumes that oil's getting in there and giving it the position it wants when it's really not. So you're going to start having runability problems, run like crap. It's because the timing is off compared to what the computer thinks it should be. Another thing you get is noise. So these solenoids can make noises, but also the phasers themselves. Sometimes you'll hear kind of a knocky, clicky type sound. A lot of times what that is you have a void in here. It thinks there's oil in there. So basically what's happening is this thing is just slowly oscillating back and forth, which is also oscillating that camshaft back and forth. Usually what happens if it gets bad enough is that camshaft does that for long enough that you start to score the cam caps. Now you've got metal throughout the engine, you've got big problems. But once again, when you don't have oil in there when it's supposed to, it loses control and it will just sit there and oscillate back and forth. One of the main things that happens with these. Now, another common issue is it is an electrical solenoid. This thing can go bad. A lot of times what will happen is at an idle, you pull up to a stoplight, stop sign, truck's running real rough, but when you take off and you're driving down the highway, it seems to be running okay. That could be a solenoid issue. You always got to be a little careful on this because you could have debris in there that's blocking this thing from working correctly, or the solenoid itself could be bad. But an easy test to do is turn the truck off, unplug both of your cam phaser solenoids on both banks, start the truck up, take it for a drive. Does it idle correctly now? Does it run better? You're going to have a lack of power because it's not able to give you that timing with the camshaft that it could with this plugged in. But if that is your issue, that's a good way to expose that, hey, maybe I've got something going on with my cam phaser, maybe it's a solenoid, maybe I've got some debris in that system. So the cam phaser issue is my #1 problem with the 3-valve 5.4. It's the most common. It's also not a simple thing to fix. Once again, if you let that thing oscillate in there long enough, you're going to end up scoring those cam caps. A lot of times that's going to require an engine at that point. So to prevent this, oil changes on time with good synthetic oil. The other thing you can do is if you've bought a truck, maybe it's running fine now, but it's got some miles on it, you don't know the maintenance history of it, is run a cleaner through that thing. I would recommend BG EPR. That is going to be the best cleaner I've seen to clean these things up, clean any of that fine debris that's caught into these solenoids. Do that regularly. It's going to prevent a lot of those headaches that come with this engine. And once again, if you bought one of those trucks new and you took great care of it, you can probably get a lot of miles out of that thing. There are a few other things that happen with those. The spark plugs, they don't blow out like the 2-valve spark plugs do, but when you try to get them out, a lot of times they stick in the head and they actually break off. So that's another issue you might run into. 2007, they had some bad thrust washers, so you'd end up with crankshaft play. But once again, if you got one of those trucks, you got a lot of miles on it, take care of it. It'll treat you well. But if you start having issues, look towards those cam phasers. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. See you guys next time.